at least. At least. Okay. Good evening, everyone. We are opening the Charter Revision Commission meeting for March 13th at 6:32. We welcome everybody. Good evening, everyone. We are opening the Charter Revision.
My fault, sorry.
Okay, do we have to start over or good?
No, it's.
Okay.
Yeah, it's-
All right, so with roll call, Rick McQuaid is not with us this evening. If need be, we could call him. Michael Witherspoon also could not make it. So Benita Raleigh Watford is here. Carl Dickens,
Here.
Angela Wasuna,
I'm here.
and Tyler Fairburn.
Here,
Okay, so we do have a quorum. And we can go on with the meeting. The first order of the agenda is to approve the minutes of our previous meeting of March 1st. So if someone would move the minutes, we could-
I mean, I looked through them. I didn't catch anything.
somebody, let's move it.
I'll make a motion to move them.
Thank you. Second.
I'll second them.
All right, thank you. Okay, Carl, you have a comment?
No, she beat me. She's faster than I
Oh,
am.
okay. All right. Does anyone have any comments or corrections? Hearing none, seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone unanimously approved. So moving on to the agenda, we had hoped to have some visitors this evening, but we were not able to make that all happen for this meeting. And Steve, I assume we're gonna work on that for next week, next
Well,
meeting, rather.
Yeah, what I was going to,
Treasurer, sheriff.
yeah, I was going to suggest, I was just looking at the calendar. Remember, we reserved, our next regular meeting is the 5th of
April. right.
April, but we had a hold, and I think we scheduled it as a regular meeting for a hold on the 29th. And my question is, do we want, because I think you were looking at the 5th for public comment, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but we want to get the Board of Ed in and superintendent in prior
Yeah.
to that.
Oh, prior to the public comment. So do you want to try to get the Board of Ed and the 4 officers in on the 29th?
Any comment from, that's an additional meeting.
We had it as a hold on our schedule.
Okay,
I am not here that day, so.
okay. Any other commissioner available, not available?
What was the date you were talking about?
I have to,
March 29th.
I've got to look.
Yeah, I'm available on the 29th, but not the 5th.
Okay.
I'll be,
The 5th, yeah.
I'll be on a plane,
Oh, where are you going this time?
the Bahamas.
Oh, well,
You didn't want to tell us that. I don't
oh,
blame you.
well, now.
Being away from my daughter.
The drudgery. Oh, my God.
I thought it was a UN peacekeeping mission to the Bahamas.
May very well
Okay.
end up being.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Benita, what is your schedule?
I'm fine on the 29th.
I'm available the 29th.
Okay, I think we should have a meeting. We've got a lot more to cover. Is that okay with you, Steve?
No, I recommended it. So,
Okay, all
I'm all
right,
for
so
that,
we
yeah.
are scheduling a meeting for the 29th. And at that meeting, we would try to get the existing treasurers, sheriffs, selectmen and constables to come if they're interested in coming.
Mhm.
Plus the Board of Education.
yeah. So if you'd like, Madam Chair, unless you want to do it, do you want me to try to send the invites out? Because
To them directly?
yeah.
Yeah,
or should
I think that might be a good thing to handle it that way.
Yeah, I just wanted to get it out as early as possible.
Yeah, yeah.
So that we set it up. I will take care of that tomorrow.
Okay, then, and the Board of Education?
Yeah, on the Board of Ed, every member of the Board of Ed and the superintendent.
Yes,
Okay. I'll get their addresses from the mayor's office.
okay, thank you. That's on the Board of Ed, it's gonna be also on the 29th.
Correct.
Okay. And then
as a matter
hearing
of,
the public meeting would be on the 5th.
Correct.
Okay, everybody on board for those dates?
So
Okay.
my question for you is this, as a matter of protocol,
Mm.
who do you want to have go first? Would the Board of Ed be offended if they're not asked to go first?
Well, I think the other ones will be quick or not even,
Okay, then we'll
might
go with
not
the
even
others.
appear.
Then maybe I'll tell the Board of Ed, we'll tell the four of them, we start at 6, Board of Ed will say get there by 6:30.
Well, we start at 6:30.
Oh, I'm sorry, 6. New Haven is at
yeah.
6. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Norwalk is 6:30. I will have the Board of Ed, the gentleman, the 4 positions come at 6:30. I'll tell the Board of Ed to get here around 7.
yes,
right.
okay, that's
Good.
great.
Excellent.
Okay.
Okay,
So,
Just a quick question of protocol. If we send these invites out to the folks that we're talking about, the individuals, and we get them out soon enough, is there a way to say in the invite that if we hear back, is that there's a reason they can't be here, but if we don't hear back or whatever and they don't show, we take that as a group, that's a no,
well,
that they're not
Uh,
interested, or?
well, let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't, we'll send the invitation out. Presumably, I'll ask the mayor's office for some phone numbers and call the
Okay.
appropriate people and have, give them the courtesy of a call, and let's not assume, and I try not to assume anything at this stage, in that
and
regard.
also, we would obviously give them it would be a hybrid opportunity. So that,
Yeah, and I'm gonna send the Board of Ed the budget section that we've redone because they're in there. And remember, there's the Board of Ed section that is part of the first section of documents we've done. So I will send out to them, to those members, the budget provisions that we've tentatively approved, as well as section section 9, I think it is, the Board of Ed, which has a cooperation clause. We don't change anything else with the Board of Ed. We just have this cooperation clause, and I think that's important for them to see.
yeah, and that they would be ready to comment so that they will,
Yeah, I don't want them to come
They
in
read
blind. I
them,
want them
yeah.
to, I want to show them what we're doing.
are doing, and
Yeah.
we're anxious for their input.
Absolutely.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And,
so
and
much.
I'll make sure, I'll CC you on it, Madam Chair, and if, I'll be happy to CC the entire commission if they'd like. So,
Sure,
so-
why not?
okay, good, Good.
Um,
excellent.
Okay. So what would you like us now to focus on?
So, if we go to, Roman numeral 5 discussion, we're obviously not going to discuss A, because that, we were hoping to have those folks here tonight. Why don't we talk a little, I was asked last week, to discuss, mayoral succession and temporary disability. In the current charter, as you may recall, there is if I can pull it up on the screen, hold on. Let me see if I can get to it quickly here. One second here. It's 3-6, here it is. I'll try to get up on the screen for you. We don't really have, I'll put it up on the screen so you see what we have in the document, and then I'll pull up. Did everybody get background document number 6?
Yes,
Yeah,
Yes.
Because that's what we'll discuss in a minute, but I want to show you what we have in the current charter. Can I just share the screen?
Yes,
Okay, there we are. Hopefully this is it. This is it. Does everybody see? I'll make it larger.
Yes,
I hope it's the right document.
looks like the construction plan for the Yankee Doodle Bridge.
There we go. Do you see vacancies? Is the vacancy item?
yeah,
yes.
Right. So this is what we have right now in the charter. So whenever a vacancy occurs from any cause, it could be death, resignation, elector not being an elector, and we do have permanent mental or physical disability or infirmity, which would incapacitate somebody in their ability to discharge the duties of office, not his office. We'll fix that. Malfeasance, et cetera, et cetera. What we don't have in the current charter, and I forget who brought it up, but I was going to bring it up if they hadn't, is we have nothing for temporary absence or disability.
Right.
And so let me bring up on the screen the comparative data. Do you see that on the screen now, or is that there? Or
Yeah, that's when you sent.
Yes.
good. Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
I'm going to make it larger. So this is one. Whoops, maybe too big. Do you see the whole thing, or did we lose the side of it? I think we've lost the
Lost
side.
the side.
All right, so let me try to bring it down a little bit. Let's see here. Let's see if this does it. Are we okay now? You see it on, or is it?
Can we get rid of or make our photos smaller?
You can do it.
The whole-
You can do it on your
Yeah.
computer.
Yeah, okay,
Just minimize.
that's better, right?
Or can everybody see it now?
Yep.
Yep.
So the Hartford provision, which just went into effect in January, is really one of the most robust provisions. If I say so myself, I drafted it, but I drafted it with the help of a lot of people in Hartford who wanted to make sure they had a way of dealing with the situation where the mayor is temporarily absent or disabled and unable to perform the duties of mayor, and in that case, the council president or another member of the council, if the president is not available, would assume that responsibility. The acting mayor gets to act as mayor, but doesn't get to take over all of the powers, doesn't get to appoint or remove officers or employees. Compensation could be adjusted so that the acting mayor, who would in effect be sitting in City Hall, working in City Hall, doing the mayor's job, would get some kind of compensation for their function and for the job that they're doing. We also say that there should be an ordinance that really addresses this issue. If the charter is not clear enough, the ordinance can expand and really lay out how all that works. There's two ways of determining.
But
what-
on
yeah.
that, you're saying shall, so they're required to do it. In the
they're-
last sentence. the
yeah, they're
council shall
required.
provide.
Yes, correct. They shall provide an ordinance so that they would adopt, or we could say may if we think if it's clear enough. There was an expectation that they wanted to do an ordinance in Hartford. It could be a may in their discretion, however we would frame it.
Mhm.
There's two ways that you determine a disability. One is that the mayor announces that she or he is not going to be in town, will not be available to conduct business. They could be abroad, they could be at a conference. In the modern world, it's different than in the old days. When I was on the Board of Aldermen in New Haven, as president pro tem, I would occasionally get the call to be the acting mayor because the mayor was in Washington or at a National League of Cities conference in San Francisco, because there were still things mayors needed to do physically, sign a document, show up at a meeting or whatever it may be, that we just didn't have capacity to do the way we can in 2023. So whether a mayor announces their temporary absence from the city or not is really discretionary for the mayor. If the mayor has a temporary disability or is sick and the mayor makes that determination, he or she's going to be in the hospital undergoing a brief period of sedation, for example, then the mayor would probably, if they're responsible, turn over the reins of government for the hour or the 2 hours. We've seen presidents do it and governors do it. So the mayor has that ability to make that determination. That's the simple case where the mayor says, I am not here. I need the president to take over while I am away. The more difficult situation, which Hartford addressed, was the issue of the mayor not notifying, and where it becomes apparent that the mayor is incapable or not performing his or her responsibilities as mayor due to an illness, a disability, or any other cause. It gives the legislative body the ability to make a determination that there is a temporary disability or absence by the mayor. It's a super majority vote. 7 votes in Hartford is 7 of 9. So they did not want to make this easy. They wanted to make it only necessary in a situation where, which absolutely called out for that kind of action, because that's a pretty serious action where the mayor is saying, not saying anything, or saying, I'm fine, I'm going to stay here. But it's clear from the, last 3 nights, the mayor ended up in a horrible situation, a car accident, was whatever it may have been, that the mayor is not capable of doing it. You would, you would be able to make a determination. We have a simple definition is, this is the 2023 kind of thing. It's not a temporary absence if the mayor is in electronic or voice communication with, in Hartford, it would be the COO. We'd have to figure out who the appropriate official would be to allow the mayor to continue to operate. So, if the mayor's at a conference in Washington or a conference in Colorado, or even a conference in Great Britain for that matter, the mayor can continue to conduct business. And Hartford felt that that was acceptable to do. We also require a
Just sort of
procedural.
just on that point. So
Yeah.
was any discussion to define what sustained absence is? Because I know we have a 30-day in the clause above where, then they have the power potentially to remove officers, etc. But like for this one, what triggers, is there a time limit that triggers this kind of action?
No,
What does sustained absence mean?
no, that's right. It's not defined. Absence is defined, or there's kind of a negative of what's not an absence, but that's one of the reasons you want to allow them to adopt an ordinance so that they can define some of these terms by
Yeah.
ordinance. And there's a standard in here, and actually Hartford, I think, did a short circuit. I think Hamden has a more, if I'm not mistaken, a more,
Yeah.
no, Hamden doesn't.
No.
No.
No. It just says unexplained and sustained absence from the town. There's no.
Yeah,
Hamden.
no, that's right. The Middletown charter requires, Middletown's the one that has a more elaborate determination. So
Yeah.
one, you would need, look, we can do it in the charter. One of the problems with defining it in the charter is things could change in the next few years. So the concept here is to set up a constitutional standard and then have the council adopt the ordinance that lays out what a sustained absence is.
Okay, so
and-
sustained absence as defined by or as decreed by, who makes that decision?
Well, it would be established by ordinance. Remember, we have this,
Okay, yeah.
the mandatory ordinance, and that's one of the reasons the ordinance was mandatory in Hartford. So they shall do that. Now,
Okay.
my hope is that the council would do that. Now, the mayor has to sign off on it, you realize. I mean, so this would be a negotiation between a mayor and a council. Now, presumably the mayor is not going to be affected by this. The hope is that no mayor is affected by this, but it would be up to the mayor and the council to come to a determination as to what are the proper standards for making that determination. In the Hartford one, if you look at the last sentence of this section, the determination before they can even take the vote is one that has to be based on best evidence as presented by competent authority. We can't define that competent authority. Is it a psychiatrist? Is it a physician? How do you subpoena? Do you end up with subpoena records?
Mhm.
There's, so there has to be some kind of due process standard for creating for going forward and taking this action. It's a pretty extreme action.
Mhm.
I haven't had to deal with it. I'm trying to think in all the years I've been involved in municipal government. I can't think of a situation where a mayor did not take unto herself or himself the responsibility of declaring their incapacity. And it's usually a temporary incapacity. I've not seen a situation where there was a confrontation that required a determination by the council to remove the mayor temporarily from office.
Steve,
It should be hard. Yep.
in this background document, one of the cities in this clause had two, that there had to be two professional.
Camden did, yeah.
medical- I don't know which-
Middletown did.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what's your read on that?
They decided to get a little more granular in Middletown. That's what they did, and they thought that you should have at least, and it also
That would be
indicated
more objective?
the
Is that-
physician should
what
be
was the
licensed.
intent?
The intent was to expand it out so that the council president doesn't bring in some medical doctor who is a friend who wants to get the mayor out of the way. I'm being facetious, but that is kind of
No,
you know,
Could happen.
that could happen. And so I think in Middletown, and the mayor was very much a part of the process. The mayor was not very active in Hartford. This was not a section he paid a lot of attention to. So it was a section that was kind of negotiated without mayoral intervention. In Middletown, the mayor did play a role, and we ended up with, I'll go down to it to show you.
Yeah.
And again, there should be a procedural ordinance, compensation, status of the council president. Let's just go through New Haven very quickly. New Haven doesn't really define it. Again, it's the same situation
Yeah.
where the mayor basically is not available. And it's usually a situation where the mayor announces that he or she is not available. And that's been the only situation I've known in New Haven. So they don't have, they do have some standards about when compensation should kick in. So you may want to look at a lot of the different provisions to see that what makes sense. We have the situation of with a permanent vacancy. We know the voluntary temporary vacancy. The mayor announces that the mayor is going to be gone, or termination of the above vacancy by notification by the council, and the council then would take an action to have two physicians, to deal with the physical or mental disability, and they have a unanimous vote standard. They were very concerned about they wanted to make sure that it was bipartisan, and they wanted to make sure that there was an absolute standard. I think that gives the mayor flexibility to get to somebody who could be loyal to the mayor. To have a unanimity standard is a pretty high standard. I thought Hartford standard at least made it difficult, but not impossible, because you want to make sure you don't have a situation where if you have the need for this provision, that you don't have an impediment in it. So, so you have a little bit more of a standard here in Middletown. Hamden, again, is a mayoral notification. And they do have a standard here, but it's a very loose standard in 3-6A, where the legislative council may determine temporary disability or absence. Again, nothing defined here, but all of this can be defined by ordinance. And this is a 2/3 vote of the members present and voting. Although there's a minimum number that have to vote. So at least 9 members of the 15-member body has to vote. And if there's 2/3 of those present and voting and at least 9, then the mayor is temporarily out of office.
9 vote affirmative.
Yeah, affirmative.
Mhm.
And Bridgeport hasn't looked at this provision in a number of years. I just wanted to give you some of the other larger cities. I'm trying to remember what we did in the charter that failed. I don't recall whether this was an issue that was addressed. And Bridgeport's had a situation where there was a natural succession because the mayor left office involuntarily, as we know, and there was an automatic succession. But let's say that there was a sustained period of time that continued where the mayor's trials and other activities kept him from serving. Would the council have had the ability to remove that person from office, at least temporarily, during trial, whatever it may be, because the mayor was not able to focus on the responsibilities? Would this provision cover that? It could cover that.
And Steve, the other issue, of course, is like, how much power would the president acting as mayor have? I mean, I think Bridgeport has the president having all the powers of the mayor, whereas some of the other charters, it's really, all the powers except power of appointment or removal. So I guess for me, the question is, is there something in the middle?
Yeah, no, I think you want to have some curtailment of the power, particularly if you're in a 30-day time frame. I mean, one of the things that none of these really address, or one of them does kind of address timing, is how long is temporary?
Yeah.
I suppose the mayor can bring a doctor's note saying that the disability no longer exists. Does the doctor's note need to be approved by the council?
Yeah.
How far do you want to go? I mean, I think you
That's
want.
the sustained absence piece. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah. And so we could either try to define that, or we could leave it to the council to define. That's really a call that you have to make. And if you want, I'll take a look.
Yeah.
In that
piece,
Yeah.
I just tied to that, how long it would be under Hartford's, the president of the council is not really replaced, that he's acting there and president,
Exactly.
I guess, the way I'm reading it, because
Yep.
there's no, and that doesn't seem to be a good idea.
No.
No, well, there's no vacancy in the office of the president during the period that
They have two different functions, and so who's doing the president's job?
the president pro
Especially if it's
tem.
for an extended period of time. That
Yeah,
they're
the president pro tem would. If the president becomes mayor, as Pedro Segarra did, he would no longer be president of the council. But if
Yeah,
he's acting temporarily, he would be acting as mayor and not serving on the council at the same time. But there's no vacancy. His position would be frozen on the council during the temporary period. The only
so
time
there
it would be
would
vacant,
not be a president of the council during that period. That's my.
you have the rules in Hartford, I believe. There is a pro tem who would temporarily take over. In other bodies, you'd have to look at the rules of the body. Although I think the charter, I believe in clear succession provisions, so that if the president is acting temporarily as mayor, then the pro tem should be acting temporarily as president during that period of time. So you don't have any kind of confusion about chain of command and responsibility.
But we don't have a pro tem in Norwalk.
We'd have to create that, or if that's what you want to do.
That was my point.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
we need to address that.
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, good.
So, and the second issue that would need to be addressed is the time element.
Yeah.
Do you, if the mayor comes back, I mean, let's take a simple case. The mayor has had surgery and the mayor didn't announce it for some reason. I think most mayors would probably say, I'm in surgery, I'm going to be out for 20 days. And it would be up to the council to decide, then the president is clearly taking over for that period of time. The mayor comes out of the hospital and rehab and resumes office. There's no action for anybody to take. The mayor has reasserted his or her responsibilities and shows up at the office. The issue is when you have a contested case and you have a situation where there is, whether it's a physical or mental disability, how do you know that the disability has passed? And so none of these address that issue. And so that's something we should really determined, maybe an examination by the doctors who made the original determination that the disability is passed, and the council doesn't have to approve it, but as long as those physicians who were part of the decision-making make a determination that the mayor has the capacity to return, maybe that's a way you can do it. Because I don't think you want to get, I think the longer you keep it in the council, the more political it becomes. And I just think that at a point where the determination of disability has been made for a reason, then I think you could probably leave it to the professional judgments of the doctors who testified as to the disability, as to why the mayor.
If they're still available, I mean, they might have passed on, so we have to have.
Well,
that-
hopefully not in 30 days or 60 days.
Well, it happens.
So-
It happens.
And so that's pretty much the Middletown Charter, right? That's what they prescribe, right? Termination of the temporary vacancy shall be confirmed by 2 physicians licensed to practice.
Yeah, we
So
did
that's- so
address
that's-
that in Middletown. Yeah.
You did. So that would be, to me, the one
Yeah.
we look, yeah.
Yeah, so if you can't get the 2 physicians who were involved, you get 2 other physicians. I mean, I think you have to rely to some extent on the good faith of some of our
Professionalism.
members of these
Right.
professions.
Stephen, I don't know that this is something we'd address, but maybe in the ordinance or whatever comes up, but I mean, somewhere in here, the condition of a mayor or whatever would be covered by HIPAA laws as well for him, right, or her?
Mhm.
Could be. It would be, when you're in a public position of this nature, and the position is, and it's going to the issue of your capacity to conduct the public's business.
Mhm.
Does the mayor have the same expectation of privacy under HIPAA that you or I would have as an employee in the government? You'd like to think that they're entitled to some level of privacy, but the chief executive of the community, and again, depending on the nature of the disability, it seems to me you are almost waiving those rights. It would be very interesting if a mayor were to invoke HIPAA and say the council can't do this. I'm not going to subject myself to an examination. What that would accelerate is potentially a removal proceeding,
Yeah.
which is covered in under your special act. You do have removal capacity. And that would be a whole range of other issues, and the consequences are much more dire, because when you're removed, you're gone, unless a court were to suggest that the power doesn't really exist, or that they abuse their power in exercising that power. So it seems to me that, a mayor who's operating in good faith, who just didn't feel the need to tell anybody this, is probably going to submit to such a procedure. But it's a pretty extreme situation.
Yeah.
But if you don't address it, then you're in a real quagmire or quandary when it comes to when you have a situation like this. They'll say, why didn't they think of this when they were doing charter revision?
Okay.
Can I ask a question too?
Of course.
Would the mayor be the one that gives the doctor the right to go against HIPAA?
Oh, you can waive your HIPAA rights. So the mayor
Okay.
can certainly waive his or her HIPAA rights. So for sure, that would be the case.
Yeah. I think the mayor would have to consent to examination by a doctor. Like he would have to make a decision, like decide. It's
Yeah.
on him.
So, I mean, the other
Legally, he can say
alternative,
no. He can just say
Yeah.
no and not
the,
provide
the
it.
other alternative is to do this in camera, to do it, to have certain evidence that's taken in executive session. Now, how do you make a public determination without debating the substance for the foundational substance for your determination, because the mayor's rights need to be protected? That'll be a hard thing to explain to the public. But then I guess the council could always say we were respecting his privacy rights or her privacy rights. If the mayor, and we've made a determination based on the examination and the evidence that was provided to us in executive session, which would be permissible under Connecticut state law, that the mayor is temporarily disabled and unable to function in office. If people have a complaint about that, go to FOI or ask the mayor to permit disclosure. So you could probably satisfy HIPAA, but then you would not satisfy the need for public knowledge. And it would be up to the public to determine how much of the mayor's privacy do they want to know something about. And and you could be sure that members of the press would be filing FOI requests to try to really get that information released. So I think you can protect the mayor. If the mayor is seeking protection, you can still proceed under FOIA and under executive session rules and not disclose the reasons for that. You can basically say that it was determined that there is evidence that the mayor is medically incapable of serving in office for a temporary period of time. And so the other question then becomes, what is a temporary absence or disability? Let's say you have the situation with I'm trying to think of one, the senator from Pennsylvania right now, and the Senate Minority Leader, frankly, has been out for a couple of weeks and is going to be out for a longer period of time. Again, neither of those are chief executives. If President Biden or Governor Lamont were somehow in that situation, when does temporary become more than temporary? How long is a chief executive permitted to remain in office? I suppose if you leave it up to the mayor and the legislative body, it really is a determination of how long the community is willing to live with the situation.
And are these random days or consecutive days?
Yeah, good question.
The presumption that I make is that it's a consecutive period of time. I mean, how you can't get a legislative body to meet every third day to figure out that the mayor is incapacitated tomorrow for one day. So my expectation is that we're looking at a sustained situation.
The Bridgeport Charter does have some language around that, right? If you look at the, chapter 2, what you sent,
Yep.
Where it talks about the special election to be held not less than 120, no more than 150 days.
That's on a vacancy. That's an actual vacancy.
So the question is, how do you determine the vacancy? What's the period?
It's when there's an actual vacancy, the mayor's gone. I'm talking about the temporary vacancy.
Yeah. But I think that can be.
But how does that define though, Steve? I mean, the mayor may be gone to get mental health help and may be gone for how many days? I mean.
Yeah, no, it's a hard thing. We in the charters I've worked on, we've not defined it because it's a very, very difficult thing to define. And if a chief executive official is suffering in some way, shape, or form, a sustained chemo treatment, a sustained any kind of treatment that could go on for a long period of time where they're going to be in a difficult state. I think that a lot of people have to make determinations. One is this something that, well, if you have a 2-year term for office, let's say, and the mayor's going to be going for 14 months or 16 months, do you simply say to the mayor, don't you think we'd be better off if you just resigned? Or if there was a removal. On the other hand, notions of in the Judeo-Christian, the modern world, all religions, I think most people want to be tolerant of somebody who is facing difficulties. So I think it becomes, what we want to do is at least have a springboard where somebody can make a determination, but you don't want it so easy that political adversaries can come in and throw you out of office because you sneezed the other day. And so I think a lot of it's going to be rule of reason if a sustained problem were to be encountered by a mayor.
Because it's not ideal to have the council president take over for an undefined period of time. I mean, that would be the assumption here, right? If there's no definition.
That is the assumption that that the council president, look, when you become council president, you need to understand that you could be the mayor. And if you don't want to be the mayor, don't become council president. And
That's
the
a
way,
Very good point.
yeah,
Which yeah,
yeah. And the same is true to the pro tem. If you have a pro tem situation, understand, when I was pro tem of the New Haven Board of Alders, I actually prayed at night. No, I assumed that I would be acting as mayor from time to time when the two of them were out of town. And I did. Although I'm the only pro tem, I'm told, who never went to the mayor's office. They said, all the others come to sit at the mayor's office, put their foot up on the desk, and you never show up. And I said, well, the only thing I want you to do is fire the school superintendent, but who I was
And you
fighting
didn't-
with at the time, which I had no power to do, and neither the real mayor. But the point is, the president becomes a very important position because the president could be mayor and should be acting as mayor during that period of time. The hope would be.
I had that situation when I was president of the council. Our mayor went to Poland, I forget for how long, 7 days, 10 days, and that was all explained to me then. So that's important to have people understand when they take on the position.
So those are the issues, and this is so those are some of the issues you need to think about. And if you want me to draft something, maybe you can
Which
have
one do you like best?
me.
Yes.
I like the fact that Hartford spells it out, but I like the fact that others raise, I think that the termination provision in Middletown is a very useful provision.
Yeah.
So I'd probably marry some of these provisions.
Can you show those on the screen again?
Oh, I'm
please?
sorry. Yeah. So let's go to Middletown. This is the Middletown provision, item number 2 at the bottom. I think that's good because that's the exit. If the mayor, because you don't want to have a situation where they don't let the mayor back in. The mayor should have the ability to get cleared to be able to come back and resume office. So I think that's,
Do we like the idea of having 2 professionals determine a health issue?
2 physicians.
2 doctors.
it's 2 physicians, yeah.
Yeah. And again, the mayor would not be forced to do this. He would have to agree to do it.
Well,
does
the
feel a bit
mayor would have to
draconian.
do it. If the
does-
mayor wants to come back to work, the mayor would have to do this.
But
Yeah.
it does feel a bit draconian if that's where you're going, Patsy.
What's that?
But I just want us
It's a bit
to make
draconian.
it,
Yeah.
to know exactly what we want to do, so that we, because it has its pros and its cons, obviously, everything does, but.
And it doesn't have to be the same 2 physicians
Right.
licensed to practice that this provision does not require the same 2 provisions
Right.
of physicians. It could be any 2 physicians. Now, if the council has their doubts because the mayor's brother-in-law is one of the physicians, I imagine they could start a new proceeding.
I was
Yeah.
going to ask, I mean, who picks these physicians? Isn't that something that's key?
Well, it seems to me that in the determination of the initial determination, the council will be making the decision about who they hire, who they bring on board. It's silent in the second. And so you could have the situation. I mean, from my perspective, if you had 2 physicians who examine the mayor on the way out, why shouldn't those 2 physicians be the ones that examine him or her on the way back in?
If available.
If available. If not available, you'd have to replace the physician.
Yeah.
Is what it comes down to.
Yeah.
And maybe the council makes that determination. The council hires a replacement physician. So you leave it up to the council to do that. Since the council is the one that made the decision, they should hire them, but there's no further council action. If the physicians determine that the mayor is capable, then the mayor comes back to work.
So Steve, in dealing with all of these communities on this issue, was there a lot of concern on the members of their charters that this was a serious issue? Or how did they feel that it was?
You know, I'm trying to remember the genesis of it. I mean, Hartford had a situation where they lost a mayor, but it wasn't because, I know Carl has his hand up. I don't know if we're
I
moving
can't
on.
see anybody. So Carl, you gotta just talk.
Well, I didn't want to interrupt anybody, but it had to do with that conversation that was going on about
Okay.
the two doctors. What if the two doctors don't agree?
Well, that's a problem. Yeah.
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 And then the other question along with that, I'm not sure how the health department is structured in the city, but is there a head physician or anybody that's the head of the health department that's a physician that could be?
That person works for the city and the
Yeah,
mayor.
Yeah,
They're
we're-
hired or appointed
That
by.
person's
Well,
on the
but you're
chain of
gonna-
command.
That's right, but you have that possibility. The mayor could say, well, I want Dr. Mednick, that's my position that has on my records, to do this examination. Somebody else could say, well, no, they would, want Dr. Tyler to come and do it. So somebody's gonna have to make a decision who the doctor would be anyway. It just seems to me, in my mind, it cleaner that if it's somebody that is in the loop, so to speak.
I mean, I suppose the way you could ultimately do the return situation is the mayor gets to pick a physician, the council gets to pick a physician. If there's a difference of opinion between the two physicians, then the two doctors get to pick a third. That happens in mediations and
Mhm.
Yeah, all the time.
mediations all the time. So you could have that kind of protection. We can do that in the charter. We could leave it up to the ordinance. I mean, I think something like that, if you're going to have this in the charter, you should close that loop now and make a determination as to how you break the tie in that situation. It would be an unfortunate way to return. You'd like to think that two professionals should be able to make a determination that the mayor has capacity to serve. These are not easy issues. So as I was about to say, Hartford addressed the situation where they lost a mayor, but it wasn't because of the disability, but because they had that situation. I think they focused on this issue. Hamden addressed it, but they didn't address it as robustly as other communities because they did have a situation where somebody came in and for a period of time and just didn't want to be mayor much longer than that. So they ended up addressing that issue in that way. But again, they didn't define what a sustained absence was any more than anybody than any of the other communities did as well. So it's in Stamford, we're addressing the issue right now. And somebody came with this convoluted formula. If the mayor is at a conference within a radius of so many miles, I said, that's absurd.
That's insane.
If the mayor's at a conference and can pick up his or her cell phone and talk to the chief of staff, the mayor's not absent in the modern world. So that's not the issue. I don't find that to be the problematic issue.
No.
So.
Can I ask a question too, in terms of, is it better to be in the charter than to wait for an ordinance to be developed?
I think it's better to have those things in the charter, Commissioner, that you think need to be addressed than to leave it to the council.
Yeah.
Because my experience has been that very often, because I have this strong intuition and feeling that we want our council to do things in real time. But very often I have trigger provisions in charters that say, you shall adopt a procurement ordinance, you shall adopt a reform of the civil service provisions. And 10 years later, you do a charter revision and nothing's changed.
Right.
It's like, guys, the charter says you're supposed to do something and you didn't do it. Just came across this in Hamden. And I'm constantly talking to my council. I represent the city council, their legislative council, and say, you have to do this. Oh, we're busy. We haven't gotten to it. Well, you got to do it. It says you have to do it. Let's not violate our charter. And let's just get it done. So I think that a good example, Benita, if you don't mind calling you Benita, that I think you need to close the circle on the resumption of the mayor serving. I don't think you want to
Me
leave
too.
that. Yeah, I don't think you want to leave that. Do we want to close the circle on the issue that Angela raised on what is a temporary or what is a what is a sustained absence? That's going to be hard to.
It's a difficult one, and I think
Yeah.
it can be partly cured by also sort of defining, what powers the acting president would have within a certain period of time. I think the Hartford Charter, if I'm not mistaken, addressed that and gives it like 30. If after 30 days the mayor is absent, then the president has sort of full powers of the mayor, so that business can continue as usual, so to speak.
So you would have the 30-day time frame where the president is in a limited
Restricted.
position.
Yes,
But even if it's a sustained disability, you need to have somebody who is fully operational as mayor.
Exactly. So that seems to be a good compromise.
Yeah.
I mean, Bridgeport just gives the president immediate, like, all powers, and I think we want to restrict it a little bit.
Yeah.
So I really like the Hartford. It just seems much more thoughtful than the others that I've seen. Yeah.
Thank you.
I guess what I'm wondering about too is that, like, sustained, Angela, what you're talking about, what does sustained mean? Because thinking about, COVID. And so the mayor gets COVID and is put on a ventilator.
Right.
What happens then? Who takes over and when? You know what I mean?
So I think the council president would take over, but your question is for how long? And
For
I mean,
how
my
long?
preference would be for us to think about, like, is it 3 months, especially if you're thinking of two-year terms, like what level of absence do we think that without a mayor, the city will not be able to operate optimally? Because
Yeah.
leaving it open, to me, I'm not comfortable with leaving it open. But I also hear your point, Steve, about being a bit compassionate here, and that there are a lot of variables in these situations.
Yeah, I mean, I think you have a situation where you're going to have to let people in real time make a determination, because I think if it becomes really sustained, especially in the context of a 2-year term, who knows where we're going to go on that, but let's assume the 2-year term. Then you can have a point where at some point the mayor has missed most of the term of office. At some point, somebody has got to operate as mayor. And so you have one of two decisions to make. You don't want to have an automatic termination. You don't want to have a situation that if the mayor can't return in 9 months, he or she is out and gone and done. That's a reversal of an election that you shouldn't do lightly. But I think that you do need to have a trigger where the temporary mayor can run the government. Now, you'd like to think and hope that the temporary mayor is not going to fire the mayor's chief of staff and the health director and the corporation council, and put their own people in there, because now I don't know who would serve in those offices, knowing that it's, quote, temporary. It's not even a full term, because the mayor should be returning. And most rational council presidents, and usually in Connecticut, at least in the big cities, you tend to be of the same political party. So I know right now in Stamford, there's leadership in the Board of Reps and leadership in the mayor that are not all aligned on a number of issues. But I'd like to think in most of the cities, if you had a transition, your acting mayor would try to honor the administration and the way the administration operates, but they need to be able to operate. And if they have to fire somebody, they should be able to fire somebody at that point. So whether it's 30 days or 45 days or 60 days, that's not a legal judgment. It's a judgment call that you need to make as to what the proper time frame is.
Okay.
So I feel that there's sort of a consensus on the Hartford one, is having the being favored by most people. Am I correct in that? Or not?
with the Middletown clause too.
Yeah, yeah, for the two,
Yeah.
two fixes. And you're going to draft something for us, so I think it would be helpful for you to draft this with the idea of a 2-year term for a mayor. And also for what would happen with a 4-year, because it will be totally, I think there'll be a lot of difference. You'd have to have, time limits, and then do you have another election or what? If it's within this, let's just say within the first 60 days of a 4-year term, something physical came up and the mayor was incapacitated.
Well, that's an interesting question. So the real question becomes, in a 4-year term cycle, and I
Yeah.
don't think anybody has addressed this issue, but in a 4-year cycle, do you set a time nearing the end of the first 2 years that automatically turns the disability into a permanent into a
Removal.
vacancy, into an actual determination that the mayor is no
Yeah.
longer capable? Would you require a second council action at that point? Because
Or another election.
Well,
Special election.
It would be
Well-
helpful to see the removal procedures of a mayor, like I just against this, just to see how
yeah,
they would, how
Well,
it would.
yeah.
let me see. Let me take a look quickly and see.
Yeah, because if there's a way we can tie that, like, after
Yeah,
X
we
amount of
we
time,
have to be prepared to answer that issue.
exactly.
No, I got it. Hold
What
on.
would trigger removal of the mayor in this instance?
I'm looking. Hold on.
But let's think in terms that it's not a removal, that the mayor dies.
Well, that's
Uh,
different. That's
well,
vacant. That's a
Yes,
vacancy.
then it becomes vacant, but in this instance where
We have to look at it from a 2-year point of view and a 4-year term.
there's a sustained absence and we don't know when the mayor will return, is there a point at which
A tipping point,
where
a
we
tipping
trigger
point.
removal? Exactly, Bonita. Yeah.
Well, your provisions on. Which I'm looking at one second. Let me go back to the other screen, the other issue. Here it is. So whenever a vacancy occurs, so. Yeah, because this is the provision, and the question is, I'm taking a look and seeing what your removal provisions look like. I have now, one of the problems with removal provisions, I will tell you, is they've not been tested in Connecticut. I've told you can't recall elected officials because there's no express grant of authority to do so. And a number of us have argued that you could, I'm looking, I don't know if you have a distinct removal provision, hold on, in this charter, because in order to rather than spend the time now, I will look at the removal provisions, if any, and see how they work with this.
Yeah.
Because
And the
one of-
vacancy piece.
Yeah.
Exactly.
well, yeah, so
so one is
Mhm.
permanent mental or physical
Yeah.
disability, but the other one is not permanent. And how long does it go on
yeah,
before, and,
yeah, the problem is with the charter as it's currently crafted is, I'm not sure. Let me take one more quick look here. Removal, here it is, page 21. Let me just take a quick look. I knew it was in here somewhere. Yes, and this goes back to special laws in 1913. So you have a special act removal provision, 3-8. Let me just move ahead to that so you can all see it with me. Here it is.
Do we know if in the history of Norwalk we've ever faced this?
I do not know the answer. Not,
So neglect of duty, I think that's where,
Not in the last 60 years that I know of.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know about before that.
Yeah, I've been active a long time, and I've been a student of cities in Connecticut, and most of the mayors who have run into problems in Waterbury, in Bridgeport, in Hartford, they did not have to go through removal proceedings. They all left office. So none of these provisions have ever been exercised in the situations that required it. And I cannot think of a situation where we had a disability that led to the mayor leaving office. So the mayor has a right to be heard. And it doesn't lay out, it doesn't lay out the grounds. It says,
it says neglect of duty or official misconduct.
yeah, that's
Now,
exactly
neglect
right.
of duty, I mean, there's intent implied there, which may not be the case for somebody
Yeah.
who is
Yeah.
incompetent.
Yeah,
I don't know whether this is where, we think of adding something that, like the sustained absence, I don't know.
well, I think what we can do, frankly, is because the 3-6A refers to permanent mental or disability, or I think we can add, or for the reasons set forth in
In section, yeah.
3-6A, because that's a special act provision. Let me take a look. That's also a special act provision that goes back to 1913. Since those two provisions are there, I think it's fair to read them together. And that's the way we can do it,
Okay.
is to kind of marry 3-8 with 3-6. All right, I'll
I
play
think
with
that
that.
makes sense. I think that makes sense because it does. I mean,
Yeah.
you can't, because the other provision is too open-ended ad infinitum. Like this would at least provide a basis for the council to make a decision on whether to trigger proceedings to removal. And I like that there's a process. I mean, and the mayor has, he can have his say or her say.
And in some
Oh,
of my,
Steve, are you able to do that for us for the next meeting or?
Oh,
what
happy
was the
to. Yeah.
schedule?
oh no,
Okay.
I'll get that done pretty quickly. It's
Okay.
interesting. Let me show you something. I don't know if I can do it quickly. Well, I'm not going to show. I'll we can't mess around too much with the special act provisions because those are the express grant of power. And if I start manipulating and playing with it, it would be problematic. We have very, very good removal provisions in Hamden that lay it out. I mean, very, very clear provisions. But I think I can marry these two provisions without having a problem. So I'll have that for your next meeting. I'll
Okay,
write that
thank
down. Disability update. Good. All right.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you. That was very helpful for me. Okay, so the next issue is background document number 5. Where is it? Here it is. All right, let me make this larger.
4.
So this is the issue of when do you start the term of office? We're not going to focus on the 2-year, 4-year issue tonight. I think we wanted, the chair wanted to wait until we had some more public input before we addressed that issue. But one of the issues has come up right now. If you see in your charter, Norwalk has one of the earlier transition provisions. Norwalk is and New Britain does as well. I thought New Britain changed theirs. I would double check that. But New Britain, which astonished me, has their transition in 7 days, the first Tuesday after the election. So you get elected on one Tuesday, and the next Tuesday you're the mayor. And that's a big city. It's an awfully quick. It goes back to a kind of a paranoid style of government where no one trusted anybody, and the objective was get them out. If they lose, get them out there immediately, and we get the new people in tomorrow. And there might have been a simpler time where that was possible. So New Britain has a very short period. You have a very short period, the second Tuesday. So it's a week after New Britain. West Hartford, and keep in mind, West Hartford is not a strong mayor form of government. It's a manager, council manager form of government. So the idea of a council starting the second on the same date that Norwalk starts is not a big deal, because it's not a huge transition of administrations per se, because the city manager, the town manager remains in office. Fairfield was making an adjustment in their charter that failed, I think was taking them into December sometime. But again, Fairfield is a Board of Selectmen form of government with an RTM. Hamden has an end of November timeframe, last Sunday in November. So that's a 3-week time frame. Hamden is a city of about 60,000, pretty sophisticated place. I thought that was still a tight time frame, but it brings them closer to what some of the other big cities have. Bridgeport, December 1st, Stamford, December 1st, Waterbury, December 1st, Danbury, the first business day of December. New Haven and Hartford have the January 1st model. So that's the range. And this is all fancy color coded and everything. I really tried to, group people in their categories. So Norwalk has one of the shortest, and I think the mayor's office doesn't affect the current mayor because the mayor is the mayor. But I think the mayor's office made a determination or made a statement that they thought this was an awfully short transition for a city that's as robust and large as the city of Norwalk in terms of just trying to repopulate an administration. And so that's the issue is, do you want to move it from the second Tuesday following the election to a longer date, whether it's December or January or the end of November, whatever it may be? Those are your choices. Or something in between. Nothing says you can't do it December 15th. So I'm not recommending that, but I'm just saying that you have choices.
I think whatever we think about, we shouldn't have just a date because we don't want it on, on a Sunday or a holiday or, a day of worship. I think we need to talk about that.
Well, that's why Danbury was very interesting. It's the first business day.
Yes, I like that. Yeah.
I thought that was they're the only one that does, by the way. In New Haven, we used to get inaugurated on January 1, whatever day of the week that was.
Yeah.
So if it was a Sunday, it was a Sunday.
New Year's Day,
Yeah, New Year's Day.
holiday.
Yep.
Does it make any difference at all whether it's a 2-year or a 4-year term in terms of how long the lame duck period is and the?
A good point.
That's an interesting point. It's from my perspective, no, because the transition is on the way into the office, whether it's a 2-year or 4-year cycle. You still have to plan for a complete for your 4-year term. So you're not going to replace every department head. In a lot of cities, department heads are by contract, department heads are by term. We have a mayor in New Haven's in his second term. He's still now finally getting, after almost 4 years in office, to a point where most of the department heads have either been reappointed by him or have been replaced by him. But in terms of the top coordinators, your chief of staff, having the nucleus of your structure around you, that's the reason you want to have a little more time to give people time to plan to come in and take office with you. I think that the 1 week I always was shocked by the New Britain model. I did not realize the Norwalk model was so close to that, frankly. And I've argued through 2 charter revisions in Hamden that I think I don't know why they just can't move it into December. They're so close to December anyhow, but they've kept it the same way since 1966. So I don't think it makes a difference is the answer.
So any comments from our commissioners?
No, I like the idea of the one that says about the first business day though, because I think there's so many other variables that you guys went
Yeah.
through them. That you don't need to bring that into the picture, just the, first business day. Pick a month, December or January, that happens following the election. I would prefer later than,
January, yeah.
I would too,
I like the
Carl.
Hartford model, January 1st. I mean, I guess the question is more like, what is the optimal amount of time that's needed to make that transition? And are there any insights we can get on that?
Yeah, look at it this way. The president of the United States gets elected the same day as a mayor in November. No, really,
Yeah,
November.
Yeah, no,
And they're in
exactly.
office by January 20.
Yeah.
I think January, I don't think you want to push it beyond January 1st or
No,
the first
that's why I
business day in
I
January.
really like the Hartford model or something.
Yeah.
yeah, I do too.
My experience, as somebody who's worked in municipal government for years now, is that,
Yeah.
I think like a month and change is more than enough time to make a transition. I've been, in cities where there have been, cooperative, productive transitions. And then some that are much less so. And it's almost the ones that are messier that it's nice to have that more time. Yeah, I mean,
That's
you
interesting,
need to
yeah.
start kind of working around
Yeah.
the people who are obfuscating and whatever else. So I think it would be good to do. I like first business day in January. I think it's you're shortening. You don't need them as much time as the presidential transition, but I do think it's good to have more time than less to make that happen.
The other thing, I'll look at your charter. Thank you, Tyler. I think those are great insights. You want to make sure there's no chicanery where you don't have cooperation between the outgoing mayor and the incoming mayor. And I think we have provisions in the Waterbury Charter that limit the mayor's appointment authorities after the election.
That's a good,
That would be
idea.
good.
So that you can't fill boards and commissions. And I won't name the city right now, but there's a mayor who's not running who all of a sudden says, oh, I've got all these appointments to make. And it's wreaking havoc because, you have other people who are affected by it and you have candidates for mayor who are running and they're saying, hey, you didn't do it for X number of years. I don't want to say how many years. I don't want to give it away. And so you have that kind of situation, but it usually plugs in sometime after after the primary process, sometime in September. So from September through the end of the term, you don't have appointment authority, is what it comes down to.
That makes perfect
Is
sense.
that for Norwalk too?
I'm suggesting that is something you may want to consider,
Okay,
particularly if you're prolonging the transition.
Yeah.
It was just a follow up on the point that Tyler was making.
Yeah,
Okay, I'm confused by what you just said, Steve.
Oh, sorry.
So that you're saying that the primary is in September, the election is November. And from that time of September to November, if the person is not running for the office, they can't appoint anybody. What if somebody dies in between that period?
Oh,
of
that's a
time?
good point. So keep it at the November cycle. So once the term is over, you cannot make once you have a new mayor elected, your ability to appoint is limited.
Right. That sort of goes to the point where the president acting as mayor can't hire or fire, follows
Yep.
that same theory.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, because you don't have a
Any-
situation, let's say you have an incumbent mayor who's running, they should have the ability to continue to do what they have to do. It's only after they lose.
Right.
Now,
Right.
I think one of my provisions does say that if they lose the primary, and
oh,
yeah,
Oh,
that's another thing. I will look at, I think it's Waterbury. I'll take a look at the Waterbury provision.
okay. Anybody else have comments on that idea? That issue, rather?
So is there consensus first business day in January?
I like that.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I'm fine with that too.
Same.
All right, good. Excellent. Well, that's
As
helpful.
long as you, that, you know, it's limited in terms of who can
Do
Maybe
what?
change department heads and that. kind of
Right.
thing.
I'll have some language for you on
Well,
that.
couldn't they change the department heads or hiring a personnel be tagged to the fact that the newly elected mayor can't do that until after he's inaugurated? And the one that's now a lame duck can't make any appointments because you're now gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ideally, that should be the case.
That should be the case. That's the way it should operate.
But we just
Yeah.
need to make sure there's no mischief that can happen.
Yeah.
Because
So
if
we're
I lose and
talking-
Steve comes in, I'm gonna give
basically-
Steve a bunch of duds.
we're talking
you.
6 weeks. Talking
Thank you.
6
I
weeks
resemble that remark. So thank you.
Or more, 7 weeks. Are we talking 7 weeks?
That's
That
still
seems
a
like a
very short
long
period of
time.
time. Yeah.
To me, it seems like a long period of time, but, wow.
There's Christmas in there.
It's
So
Christmas,
we go
Thanksgiving.
from 1 week to 7 weeks.
Yeah, but if you look at it, Angela, in working weeks, it's not
Yeah.
7 weeks
Yeah.
at the end of the year like that. It's probably 5, 4,
Yeah.
depending on when the holidays fall.
In New
When the
Haven,
Election is.
yeah. In New Haven, they actually have a provision that gives the incoming mayor an office in City Hall to work
And
on.
it should be,
What's that?
and there should be one.
Yeah. It's like the presidential transition. So New Haven's has had that provision for a long time where there is clearly a transition requirement in the charter that lays out an office requirement for the incoming mayor. Now, the incoming mayor doesn't get a salary, but the people working on the transition would be entitled, the budget would probably have to have some funds for a transition operation for the incoming mayor. It's sensible. So
Yeah.
let me play with that and I'll give you some language.
And this concept, no matter which way we go, could end up being one that's heavily discussed by citizens and residents in Norwalk.
So the next thing on my list is the list of critical charter issues for public hearing on April 5th. And so we're going to have this one additional meeting, but if you want to publicize what you're doing on the 5th, does it make sense for you guys to discuss right now what you'd like to publicize as issues you'd like to get the public to respond on? I know that the chair has already mentioned the big one. So I assume that would be something you'd want to have. And what kind of publicity? I think you should really think about how do you want to cast the net so that you maximize public participation on the 5th of April. And
So, yeah, I want to address that because now with the fact that we didn't have the board this week and we're pushing everything out, my gut is saying we need to push that public hearing out to the next meeting in April. I don't think we're ready for it. Because we want to have things that that we feel strongly about, that we're going to recommend, or that our major discussion. I think is especially because we have had no publicity at all. None. Other than that we were announced as a commission. So I don't think we're going to be ready for that on the 5th. Any comments?
Could we discuss the kinds of things that we are looking for public comment on? Just to find out what they are so that then we can determine we have
Sure, well,
talked about enough.
Well, I would think that any change of substance that we're recommending should be included.
Like the mayoral term
Yes, yes, definitely that.
and a
yes.
commencement date.
And then this issue
So-
that we're just talking about now is,
Was April 5th was gonna be the public hearing date anyway, so this is what I was thinking, is I started working today. On like kind of a mashup of Steve's FAQs and kind of like an op-ed, right? And I thought I'd put something together, send it to the whole commission to look at and mark up or whatever, and then I thought we could
you
send
did
it.
that today?
I started it,
Oh,
yeah.
oh.
Yeah, so but I mean, I
You
should be
didn't
able
get
to have it-
anything.
Yeah, I didn't get
No, I didn't
anything.
send it, but I'll have it done by
Yeah, this is great.
to Nancy and Norwalk or whoever else, or post it on the website.
Oh,
Just-
I haven't seen it yet.
You know, it's not done. It's not, it's in,
Oh,
it's, I'm still
I'm
working
just
on
putting
it.
up, I've just put up on the screen the FAQ that I did. for-
Yeah, right. So it's
Okay.
kind of a combination of this and just kind of a status
Mhm.
update of where we are and you know, in like an op-ed format. And I think if we can get that, you know, if we can get that done and out, you know, next week, that would give us close to 2 weeks ahead of that April 5th date, which I hope would be enough time. If
We're
we
not
had something
gonna-
like that
yeah,
out there.
One of the things you need to be mindful and careful about at this stage in the process, whether it's April 5th, that's your call. That's a judgment you have to make, whether it's April 5th or April 19th, is we will not have a lot of time after that meeting. And so, and keep in mind that the real focus, I keep saying this like a mantra, is that we're reforming the document, not reforming the government. We're restructuring the document, not restructuring the government. There are a few changes that we're looking at, including the term of office, the commencement date, but there's not going to be a long list of major. I think we're looking at. I've drafted the proposal on the legislative council, the common council, so that the president is the automatically succeeds. People think that's what already exists, but it doesn't. But we're not going to have a lot of other radical changes. We're not eliminating the board. We're not altering the Board of Education or the BET. And so we want to make sure that we don't invite a number of people to come in and talk about structural governance changes. And at this late stage in the charter process, because that could lead to a lot of frustration. So I think whatever Tyler's working on should be very clear that the focus of this commission has been document restructuring. There are a few substantive issues that we're focusing on, and we would like your opinions on that. Because if you open up the door to a
Yeah.
bunch of new issues, you could end up with a very frustrated public.
I would agree with that,
Stage.
Steve.
And frustrated commission.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Steve, what
I-
you're saying is we should be very clear on what the asks are
Yep.
for this first public hearing, rather than having an open-ended one where they're sort of
Yep.
commenting on all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Because it'll be a
And
very
that would
confused-
be.
It'll be a very confused public anyway.
Yeah, that's what I was hoping to do with this document, would be to make it clear, you know, in addition to kind of, you know, anticipating some of the questions and answering them, make it clear from the top that this was not, you know, we are not setting out to remake Norwalk government. We're trying to, first and foremost, make an actual
Readable document.
usable
Readable, yeah.
city charter, which is the
And
most
a
important
readable
thing.
one, a readable
Right.
by the public.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly.
Right.
I think that's the point we want to stress from the top of this, and then, you know, you get into the couple changes that we've suggested based on, you know, best practices and feedback from the community or whatever, but at its core, it's just a you know, an update to you know, archaic and confusing document.
One of the things that we might want to do, which just occurred to me as we were talking here, is, and I'll be happy to send it out to you, Madam Chair, and to Tyler if he's taking on this exercise. One of the things you might be able to show, and I think that if you take a look, let me see if I can do this quickly on the screen to show you what I'm thinking about is, if you, Norwalk, here we are. Norwalk charter drafts. So if you go to this, it'll be up on the screen in a second. Come on. There we are. So this is the reorganized the reorganized version of the charter. Here's the point I wanted to make. This is what the table of contents is going to look like. Some of these things are going to be coming out, obviously, but when you look at this, you see some order: construction, incorporation, elections, common council, mayor, other elected officials. That's a little more spelled out now. I'll give you the updates. Departments and department heads, education. So it shows you the budget, public funds, historical provisions, taxing districts. And if you show that, let's see if my theory is correct, against the current version of the charter, which I'm pulling up right now, it'll give people an idea of what we're doing. Well, it doesn't have, the current version of the charter does not have even a table of contents, frankly. So I can't do that comparison. I thought yeah, it doesn't even have a table of contents. That's the problem. Well, but I think if we show them the table of contents in the draft charter, anyone who has looked at your charter will know that even without looking at a word in the document, they'll see something that's more organized than what you have currently. I don't know how to show it. I thought there was a table of contents in the current charter. There is not, which is a statement in and of itself. But but you might be able to do something like that. But I think you really need to have them focus on the structure, the usability, the access to the document, and the few substantive things that we
And
know.
the understandability of it. There
what?
is such a word. And so that you can understand what it says. That's
Exactly.
clear.
Yep.
Oh, there's another piece here, and that in our first couple of meetings, we did have public comments. And we had comments from the council and, other elected officials, and several of the council people had issues about being, how they are compensated, having an office, physical office for the council, having a personnel a clerk or something for the council, and we haven't addressed any of that. And they were very focused on those things, so we need to do that because they will be returning and saying, what are you doing about those things?
Well, then I think that those are great things. I think that if you draw up the list, you could probably draw up the list pretty quickly of what you think the substantive changes are. The term of office, commencement of the term. We're going to have this disability provision that we're looking at, which is.
I don't think you understood my question. My concern is that the council people came and said, we want to get paid more. We want a physical office, and we want a staff person. And we have not discussed that, whether we are going to talk about it or not talk about it, or care about it or not care about it.
Well, I drafted the council section, and which everybody has. We haven't yet gotten to that. I thought that the idea of the public outreach was to get a little more comment from the public as we go into those issues. So I was just going to add to your list those council issues, because this is not the statutory. We had the first statutory public hearing at the opening of this process. This is simply one more hearing to try to get public input in the process. You don't have product. I mean, you could show them the budget section, which we still have some openings on, as something that you've done, but that's not yet complete. That's what the second public hearing is about. What you're trying to do here is you're trying to show people where we're going, what we're trying to do. I think that's the point of Tyler's exercise with the op-ed, and then have people see and actually do a little reversal if they have questions for you. Normally, I say you shouldn't answer questions, but if we're trying to get more public involvement, it'd be nice if people came who have a point of view and can have a conversation with the commission, even more than a public hearing, a kind of a conversation with the commission on where we are. What are the substantive issues that we're looking at, which are not a huge list, because the substance that we're looking at is the structure. You might open up the meeting with that discussion on what we're doing with structure. Yeah.
Make that very clear.
And to make one last point, that I think everybody needs to understand, I've tried to say this multiple times, and I'm not looking at you, Angela, when I say this, but this is not the drafts you have in front of you are very imperfect documents. And so I won't apologize, because right now I'm trying to synthesize all of this information. I was saying to the chair earlier today that I have one last section. Everything is drafted now. You haven't seen a couple of them because I'm having discussions with the Corporation Council and some other people. The only sections not been drafted now are the department heads. Boards and commissions is drafted. Everything is now just about done except that. I will hope to have that done by the end of next week. And that the month of April, we're going to be spending going through and refining the document, April and May. We're going to get a date from the councils to when they want to have this document in their hands. And we will continue to refine and clean this document even after you send it to the council and it comes back to you. I always, in all the resolutions, when we go from step to step, to say, council shall continue to scrive, council shall continue to scour the document and clean the document up, because it's a living organism right now and we have to try to make it move. So I do apologize, but I don't like to throw out work that looks sloppy.
No,
but
it's fully understood. Fully
Yeah.
understood.
Good.
You have to get to a certain point before you can do all the refining.
Yeah, so because there could be changes and all that. So I don't make internal reference changes. I don't do any of that stuff until we get closer to the end of the process. My hope is that in your hands at the end of April, early May, will be the complete document, still as a work in progress, but at least you'll be able to see a complete document where you could do a red line to the introductory document. So you get to see what you've done at this point. But normally you don't see the complete document. I won't see it until I put it together until the end of April, early May. So that's what we're
So
aiming.
you're comfortable with that, staying with the April 5th date?
Yeah, you don't have to comfort. My comfort's not critical, but the earlier get it in, the better off we are, is my view.
Okay. Any other comments on that? So everybody seems to be okay staying with the April 5th. Okay.
I think we can make it
Okay.
work, yeah.
Are we all going to be there? I forgot, Angela, when are you gone?
I'm not here April 5th, but I'm here for the 29th. So
Okay,
that's the date I'm not,
all right.
on a plane.
I guess my thought is that it'd be nice if all of us were there for the public meeting.
Yeah.
Then that should be your determinant. You should make that determination whether,
It would be, I think it would be helpful just so that,
Yeah, and you could take a poll. I mean, I think I'll be landing, so I hope I could join potentially virtually, but it depends on the other commissioners.
So everybody else is available on the 19th we're talking about, right? Changing, is that what,
Yeah, with a spoon, I don't know, we don't know.
and Michael, he was not available today.
We could check.
He was out of town or something.
Could we email about that?
Sure.
I think you should email because
Yeah.
Make sure everybody check their schedules.
then
Okay.
everybody
I
should
need
make
to
best
check
efforts
mine.
to be at the meeting.
Yeah.
I need to check mine
Benita,
too.
Virtually on the airport, I'll do that.
Benita, you were gonna say something?
I just would like to be there, I'd like to check my schedule to make sure I'm there
Sure.
April 19th. But the other question I had about the Common Council, I mean, about them getting an office is in the charter.
Well, I'm
Yeah, I
telling
just
you,
think that
no,
sounds
I'm
really
telling you
strange.
what they were focused on.
I mean,
Yeah.
really,
Well, it is, Hartford now has a provision of that nature. New Haven has had it for years.
oh,
New Haven-
okay.
Yeah, New
Okay.
Haven has the Office of Legislative Services, which is as they would call it, and I'll call it that because I was a former alderman, the premier legislative office in local government in Connecticut. It's a really outstanding staff-based structure So that is something you can do. Bridgeport technically has it in their charter, but they don't employ anybody. They have had nobody working in that office for, I think when Tyler was there, they didn't have anybody working in that office. And
I
so,
think part of their concern is that they're doing a lot of work and they have nobody assigned to them to coordinate for them. And I can understand that they have a lot of responsibility. So that's their concern that
I
they
put
do
it on the
this
list
their
of
own.
things for the public to look at and give us feedback on. That'd be great.
Okay.
And then their salary, which is in the charter, is $600. And in the sixties, when I was on the council, it was $600. So that is a concern of theirs. And whether or not there should be any compensation defined in the charter is another question for us to resolve. You know, should that all be by ordinance? Because the mayor's salary is there too. I think is that 25,000? I forget, but no. To me, that should be an ordinance and not in the charter.
Right, I guess that's what I was thinking of too. It's just that,
But we have to make that decision, you know,
okay,
but those were the items that not only did they discuss those at our first meeting with them, but I've talked to several of them since, and they continue to make those points.
I mean, would that be something that would, their salary brought up with the budget people? And it just,
Well,
Let me explain that a little
yeah,
bit.
go ahead.
There's a little more to it. The legislative, this is specific, legislative salaries. I was looking to see, I guess I didn't do it. I did a salary comparison for one of my cities. It wasn't Norwalk. I'll get you that information when I have it. Legislative salaries by law have to go to referendum. I don't understand why that exists, but it exists. The way I have addressed the issue with most of my communities is to establish a baseline in the charter, subject to a COLA. And now that's step number one. Step number two is that the state constitution limits the number of increases a mayor and legislative members can get during a 2-year and 4-year term. You can only get a salary increase before the commencement of your 2-year term or your 4-year term, and then again before the commencement of the last 2 years of your 4-year term. So even if you have an automatic escalator in your charter, you can only get the increase twice, once in a 2-year term, twice in a 4-year term. So there are restrictions. And so leaving the salary to the budget, Bonita, means that if everybody agrees that this should be the salary for the council, the budget's not the last step. It has to go to referendum. And so the reason I've put provisions in charters is the charter is a referendum. So the voters are approving a baseline, or they're rejecting the baseline. Which is the danger sometimes of these things, but they're approving a baseline so it doesn't have to go back to them again until 10 years from then, or the next time there's a charter revision. But the voters are approving a system, and I believe that complies with the statute that requires the referendum. And so I try to take, because
So you're saying we couldn't take it out of the charter?
you could take it out of the charter and leave it to the budget. What I'm saying is that if they get an increase, it has to go to referendum. So
An increase.
if they get an increase in their compensation, if you keep the compensation the way it is, it's not an increase. It doesn't need to go anywhere.
But taking any reference to it and then say that it is an ordinance, the common council should set an ordinance on their compensation.
Correct, but the ordinance ultimately setting
has
the
to go to
compensation would be
referendum.
subject to a referendum.
Okay, all right, so we need to explain that to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that we can't, basically, is what you're saying.
Well, you could.
Without,
We can,
without having to.
Yeah.
Initiate a referendum.
Yeah, you could do that, but the question is, do you want to do that? It's easier to try to come to a reasonable number. Now, is this the right cycle to do it? If we're trying to get a document through, if we think it's a controversial issue, that's a political judgment that you need to make.
And
Personally,
then
example,
too, just as a reminder to everybody, the council is the only one that gets paid, the Board of Estimate, there is no compensation.
they're
So
not
it's just
permitted
the
by state law. They're not
Pardon?
permitted. They're not permitted by state law to get compensation.
Oh, but that's the only one that's in there.
But then what you're saying then, Steve, is that if we did decide that they should have a raise from $600 to $1,000, when the charter gets voted on, that would be the referendum.
That would be the referendum. Yeah, that would be.
And I don't think that we put anything like that in the charter. I think that's a red flag. It'll stop the charter dead.
Yeah, agreed.
That's, yeah, I think that's for another day. I think that's a legitimate issue. I think the council, just speaking as a former alder, really should be getting some more reasonable either compensation or reimbursement for expenses. I think Hartford, Hartford gets a much higher salary. They get 15,000 as their baseline. But remember, they only have 9 members on their council. And they get staff. They have a staff model in Hartford as well. So I think that those are issues, and that's why. And I think that Patsy is absolutely correct in trying to get an assessment of where the public is. How does the public think about this? Before you make any kind of final steps or actions on that. It could be, as Carl says, it could be controversial. It could be
And also, if it comes up again, that we are able to explain our constraints in dealing with the issue.
Yeah, I think the charter should give the council a right to be able to decide if they want to give themselves a raise that's made publicly or whatever. But I don't think it should be part of the charter. That makes sense. I mean, that's where I come down. I remember, Patsy, you're right. That it's not like the first meeting we had.
Oh, yeah.
Some of the members were there, said that, and some of their complaints, not complaints, their requests were legit. That they have full-time jobs plus this job, and the meetings are all broken up now, except if you're the lone duck on there that's a Republican, you have to attend every night. You're at meetings. So, and there's no staff and there's no whatever. So I understand some of those concerns.
Yeah.
And I understood some of the concerns where some of the members were saying that, they come to the meetings and they're also out doing other meetings and they get no compensation for childcare or anything else or other expenses that they have to do on behalf of, doing their work as elected council people for the city. I get all that, but I think that's their decision. I think the charter gives them the right to look at getting increases, but I don't think it should be in a charter that they get these increases. Does that make sense?
Well, Steve, what I'm hearing Steve say is that if the council decided they wanted to give themselves more compensation, it would have to go to a referendum. They can't in and of themselves do it.
Right.
They'd have to.
You're right.
And that they need to understand that. I'm just learning that tonight. So,
Yeah.
I mean, how many times have you heard citizens say, Jesus, I only got a 1% pay raise this year, but yet, these elected people just gave themselves 10%. I mean, you hear that on all levels of government.
Well, one of the things we did, the model was Hartford actually in 2002. The mayor had not gotten an increase in 15 or 20 years. And that's just not right. You got these big corporations, these municipal corporations, and the salary structures are very low at the highest levels. And we determined, I came up with a theory that if you establish a baseline in the charter, you're going to the public with it. You're making your case that we think this is a legitimate salary in Hartford. What we did is we made the mayor's baseline salary equivalent to the salary of a Superior Court judge. So it wasn't being determined by the political buddies of the mayor what the mayor was going to get paid. We came up with a standard in a prestigious office that salaries are not determined with any interest in what the mayor of Hartford is earning, or the mayor of New Haven or Waterbury or Norwalk or any of the cities. And we came up with that baseline, and we came up with the baseline of 15,000, I think, in Hartford for the council. I don't know where that came from. I don't remember where that came from. And the theory was the voters can make a determination. Is this the kind of government you want to have? Is this a fair baseline for those two principal officers? Remember, those are the only two offices that are required in the charter, mayor and a legislative body.
Right.
And so that's why it was done that way. There's no right way. There's no one way. But the idea, Hartford wanted to take it out of politics. So they knew they were going to have to play a political battle to get it done. And they did get it done. But for now, it's out of politics. And we just did it with the city treasurer. They were left out in 2002. And so 20 years later, we now have a standard for the city treasurer, which is it's a very different office. It's a full-time office that runs, it's really one of the most interesting offices in the state of Connecticut for a city. And they now have a baseline salary as well. So that's the theory behind doing it in the charter. I do think Carl's point about controversy is a legitimate point. Not to the merits of the issue, but at least to the merits of getting this thing passed. But I think it's an issue, Patsy, that would be useful to have the public weigh in on.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And to get educated on, because we're learning and we're supposed to be the experts here, right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. Anything else we want to talk about tonight?
Let me just make two quick last points, because
Okay.
I don't want to, I mean, if you want to go
Okay.
later, I can put you all to sleep, but I just want to make two quick last points. As I told you, one last section that is not done is departments. Hopefully that'll be done in the next 2 weeks. I will hope before now in the next meeting to give you updated drafts on council, mayor, and boards and commissions. So you will have rough drafts of everything but departments. The other thing you should know is I have the Corp Counsel's office, not just the Corp Counsel and his deputy, but the entire office is looking at every section that I'm drafting, because I need their input on the elimination. Remember, in some of these sections at the very end, I have the provisions that are going to be eliminated from the special act. I don't feel comfortable making a definitive, I can say in 95% of them, they shouldn't be here. But I don't know if there's an opinion in the Corp Counsel's office that relied on it, or that there is a ordinance that relies on it. And that's why I'm asking the Corp Counsel to review every section that I'm asking to be eliminated, so that we can make that judgment call. And if they can't tell me with absolute certainty that they should go away, then I may create a chapter at the end of the charter, special act provisions that are in the ether, that are just out there, but put it at the back. I'll even put it beyond the tax districts, the taxing districts, to just have them there. I'd like to get them out, but if I can't get real comfort that the ones I can't get comfort on are going to probably end up in a special act provision at the back of the charter, and somebody will have to deal with it a number of years from now, but it won't be intruding on the workable section of the charter. So that's almost it. And so, yes, that's it. That's what I have so far. That's where we
All
are.
right. Any
And we're
other
getting an email
comment?
on these dates we discussed, is that right? So we can check our calendars.
Well, they're on your calendar. I mean, these are the dates that are in your schedule.
Well, but
Except we added the
I wrote down,
29th.
I wrote down 2 dates in April that I wasn't quite,
The
I heard,
19th, right?
I wrote down an April 5th, and I also heard an April 19th.
Those are the dates that are our regular meetings. Yes.
And then we
Okay.
added the March 29th.
Which also should have been in your calendar, because
It
it was a whole date.
It is.
Okay. The whole
Right.
thing.
All right, kids, I'm asking you to just,
Okay, so somebody Benita, you have a question?
Yeah, can you, I can't get a hold, I used to get a hold of Jordan every week or
Yes.
and just, talk to him and get my copies ahead of time. Can
We
you,
will communicate. So, the person that's going to be working with us, is on vacation until Monday. So I will check with, Irene Dixon, who is the, city clerk, who is taking over that responsibility. So what, can you email me which ones you need printed out?
well, when Steve sends them out for the week, that when he sends out what we're going to be talking about, I go up to City Hall and I pick up the hard copies.
But you didn't get tonight's materials, so
I
you
did
would
not.
need those printed out
It's probably just tonight's stuff, right?
tonight and then
And
the
then
next
whatever
meeting.
moving forward.
Right.
Yeah, it's same thing, Patsy. I think you do the same thing. And I think that Benita had a protocol going with Jordan.
Yeah, yeah,
and we
because
just
I
we
need
just
to
need
do-
to, yeah, keep it going.
I'll
Yeah.
print them out. I can never read your draft across. I can't read the date when I print them off of.
I'm sorry, what I'll do is if that's a problem for everybody else, I won't
I don't
use.
know if anybody else has it. I get my I literally get my magnifying glass out to try to figure out which one, because I don't throw any of them out. I keep them all. And then I can't figure out which one is the latest one. It just, the date disappears for some reason.
Huh.
That,
Well,
yeah.
maybe I'll put, as I do it,
I
I'll
mean,
put
it's
the dates
there,
on
but
the
it's
bottom.
all muddled. It's all, very blurry.
I'd like to say that I do that deliberately to try to pull the wool over everybody's eyes, but no, I'm
Yeah,
a very transparent
I don't
person.
have any of them. Well, here's.
Yeah, and one last point, and I talked about
Uh-huh.
this with Patsy today. Everybody on this body, if you are reading the document, I know Benita raised some questions about something, and it turned out the questions that I had missed some things in one section. She was right. And the reason I didn't do it is that those are sections that I'm actually recommending that we pull out. I wasn't going to spend time on it. It was an important observation. And so I don't want to discourage that. I want everybody who's reading this document, whether you are adept at dealing with it on computer or whether you're just taking a marker and marking it up, if you want to just throw your things in the mail or give them to City Hall and have City Hall send them to me, please send me your cards and letters. Do the changes, mark them up. Don't assume. I'm gonna do everything I can. I have somebody who's going to do proofreading with me to make sure that we end up with the best document we can. But it's a team effort, and you can't draft as a team, but you can sit in your home and look at the document and give me your markups. Please do. And I do not want to discourage. And I want Benita to be discouraged because I told her I wasn't going to deal
Yeah,
with
no,
that.
as long as
Good.
I have the hard copies and, I mean, if Angela thinks they're dense, they are unreadable to me. I mean, literally, it takes me so long to get through each sentence that when I find one that I understand enough to say maybe something's wrong with this, I definitely will send it to you.
Yeah, I am trying is what I say this is a from scratch charter. It's not really, because we're not getting rid of the institutional structures. I am hoping that by the time we get to May, whatever language is ambiguous or
Archaic.
19th century, let's say, or even 20th century for them, early 20th century, we will have
Or
remedied.
lawyer.
Or lawyer.
Legally.
Sorry.
I will tell you, I do resemble that remark, but to use a quote I made earlier, one of my law professors very early on, because those of us who go to law school think that we're all, William Shakespeare's offspring in terms of our capacity, although he didn't like lawyers either, did he? And so we all think we're great writers and great thinkers, and most of us just have just prolong things too much. And my professor Lenny Orland, I will say that to him and to his face, told me compression,
Mm.
simplicity and compression. And
Yeah.
think halava, the Jewish candy that's very dense.
Mhm.
Just bring everything to the simplest way you can express it. I have been trying to get all the henceforths and wherefores and
The suches, the
yeah, the
suches.
such as, and the seds and the
That
suches.
drives me nuts.
I'm actually doing it in your neighboring town now. And people said, "Oh, that's clean. You're cleaning things up." And I said, Norwalk is
Right,
totally
yes, take it out in the hall,
the
please.
path. So that's it. So please keep doing that. Because that'll be helpful. Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome, thank you.
I just run the
Okay,
documents
to
through the
adjourn,
AI part
please.
of Google. And it
Is
comes
there-
back and says written by an attorney.
I'm sorry.
What was
Didn't
that?
hear.
We missed your joke.
I said, I just take the documents, run them through AI and Google, and it comes back and says, oh, written by an attorney.
That's a good one.
Okay,
I'm just editing
all
it.
those in favor of adjourning? Hands
Aye.
up.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. We are officially adjourned.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Laura.
everybody.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Steve. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, Steve.
right.
I was interested in